Gemini, let's get into your reading. So, the message that I have for you today is this, and it hit me immediately. Recently, a version of you came out, and it left this person completely shaken to their core. They were not ready for it, and the shock on their end is still very much present. You stopped being gentle and you stopped sugarcoating, and that sudden shift caught them off guard. This person had a comfortable picture of who you were, soft and predictable and easy to manage. That picture shattered in an instant, and now they have no idea how to handle you. What you said or did recently carried a sharpness, one that rearranged everything inside their understanding. A line was drawn firmly, and the tone behind it was something completely foreign to their experience. Let us go ahead and dive into this because the cards confirm every bit of their confusion. Come in close today because what shows up here matches exactly what your energy has been carrying. The first card we have is the Ten of Swords, and this one sets the entire tone. Ten of Swords confirms a final blow to a dynamic, one that had been draining you too long. Whatever tolerance you held on to finally collapsed, and the ending of your patience was sudden and total. Your breaking point was reached in full, and when you crossed it, no softness remained to give. No easing into it or offering gentle warnings. You cut clean, and you meant every single word. Ten of Swords tells me they felt that hit deeply because it came without any cushion at all. Every ounce of patience had evaporated, and who showed up was done explaining and done negotiating entirely. Finality lives in this card, and what they witnessed carried the weight of a person irreversibly finished. Folding was expected from you, like it always happened before, and when you refused, it rattled them. Your silence used to be the only warning, but this time you replaced it with razor-sharp clarity. Next, we have the Queen of Swords, and she confirms exactly who showed up in that moment. Queen of Swords is the energy you stepped into, cold and calculated with no room for games. Reacting from a wounded place stopped entirely, and responding from complete intellectual control took its place. Emotion was removed from the equation, and that terrified them far more than anger ever could. Queen of Swords says you spoke with precision, every word placed to land exactly where it needed. No yelling and no drama existed in that exchange, only calm, devastating truth delivered without flinching. Becoming untouchable in that moment is what this card confirms, and they felt the wall go up instantly. Manipulation stopped working, and guilt trips stopped landing. Every tactic they relied on became useless overnight. Pure clarity drove your every response, and that clarity made you absolutely unshakable in their presence. Calmness is what confused them most because they expected raw emotion and received ice-cold composure instead. Then we have the Tower, and I love this card because it confirms the impact was massive. What happened between you was not a small disagreement. It was a complete structural demolition of the old every assumption about your limits came crashing down at once, and they are still processing the rubble. Their entire perception of you collapsed in a single interaction, and recovery from that has been slow boundary setting, is not what happened here. Access was removed entirely without a single apology offered. Shock defines this card perfectly because nothing in their experience prepared them for who you became. A whole strategy was built around your softness, and you pulled the foundation from underneath it completely. What was mistaken for weakness was actually patience, and now that patience ended, they see the difference. The Tower reveals that this was not destruction for its own sake, it was necessary and overdue. Growth pushed you past the role they assigned, and the version emerging refuses to shrink back down. Finally, we have the Five of Wands, and this card shows the chaos inside their mind. Five of Wands confirms mental scrambling, a frantic attempt to figure out who you actually are now. Old versions of you clash with this new one, and reconciling the two feels impossible for them. Conflict fills every corner of their thinking because nothing about you fits the mold they built anymore. Five of Wands says they keep replaying the moment, searching for cracks in your composure that never existed. Confusion is their constant companion right now, and the person they understood has become unrecognizable entirely. Being rattled goes beyond surface frustration here, because you challenge their deepest and most confident read. Today, the message is clear and undeniable. This person is genuinely confused at your savage side. They did not expect this from you, and the cards confirm that they still cannot process it fully. Now, let us talk about you and where you are sitting inside all of this energy right now. You reached a point where enough became enough, and the switch that flipped inside you was permanent. For a long time, you tolerated things that went against your nature, swallowing words to keep the peace. Silence was your default for too long, and the cost of holding it all in grew heavy. What changed recently is that you stopped caring about being perceived as nice and chose truth instead. There was no dramatic build up to it either. One day the tolerance ran dry and you acted, surprising yourself as part of what happened because even you were not expecting that level of sharpness. Handling it felt foreign at first, like stepping into shoes that fit perfectly but looked unfamiliar. Looking back now, you do not regret a single word, and that absence of guilt confirms everything. Power showed up in your voice that day, and for once you did not apologize for it. The first card here is the King of Swords, and he confirms the mental shift that took place. King of Swords shows me that you moved into a space of pure authority, grounded and unshakable. Clarity replaced confusion inside you, and decisions that once felt impossible became effortless and immediate overnight. You stopped filtering your thoughts to protect others when your own feelings were never given that care. Intellectual power is what leads you now, replacing emotional reactivity and the fear that once held you back. Speaking your mind without shrinking used to feel impossible, but now it flows from you naturally. A sharpness lives in your communication now, and it carries weight because every word comes from conviction. King of Swords tells me you finally trust your own judgment after years of second guessing yourself. Boundaries are no longer suggestions in your world. They are laws enforced without hesitation or negotiation. Operating from sovereignty is your default now, not from the need to be liked or accepted. Next, we have the Four of Cups, and this one reveals something deeper sitting beneath the surface. Four of Cups shows a deep emotional exhaustion, a complete refusal to keep investing where nothing returns. Exhaustion with one sided effort pushed you to this point, and now apathy has replaced your willingness. Offers to reconcile or smooth things over no longer appeal, because you have outgrown the entire cycle. Four of Cups says a numbness has settled in where frustration used to live, and it feels liberating. Anger no longer lives in you, and that is what makes this version of you more dangerous. Indifference cannot be negotiated with the way anger can, and you have crossed firmly into that territory. Caring less was not a conscious choice, it was the natural result of being drained beyond your limit. Emotional availability has been turned away fully, and no offer is tempting enough to reverse it now. Then we have the Emperor, and this card tells me something important about the structure you are building. Authority over your own life is what the Emperor represents, and you have fully stepped into that role. Control is no longer something you hand to others, it stays with you firmly planted and unmovable. Decisions are made from strength now, and no outside opinion carries more weight than your own. The Emperor confirms that you are rebuilding your world on your terms with no room for old patterns. Structure and discipline now define how you move, replacing the chaos that used to run your responses. Walls are being constructed that only open for those who earn entry, and standards are much higher. Being governed by guilt or obligation is finished, and no outside emotional demands control you anymore. Self respect is the foundation of everything you are building, and nothing gets priority over that anymore. Leading your own life with full command is the energy you carry, and it suits you completely finally. We have the Seven of Wands, and this card shows me the fire behind your stance. Seven of Wands confirms that you are standing your ground, and no amount of pressure will move you. Challenges are coming from people who want the old you back, and you refuse to give them that. Defending your position takes energy, but you are willing to spend it because the freedom is worth it. Seven of Wands says you know exactly what you are fighting for, and that clarity fuels endurance. Pushback only strengthens your resolve because every attempt to pull you backward proves why you had to change. Standing alone in this feels unfamiliar but necessary, and the courage it takes is not lost on you. Battles remain ahead of you still, but your footing has never been stronger or more stable than now. You earned this version of yourself through pain and patience, and you will not hand it back cheaply. The cards see a person fully awake to their power, and that awakening is permanent from this point. Okay, let us step into their world now, because what is happening inside them is pure chaos. This person is shaken in a way they have never experienced before, and the confusion runs bone deep. Every assumption they held about you has been dismantled, and rebuilding their understanding feels impossible. Confidence in reading you was absolute for them, and having it destroyed left them genuinely destabilized. Pride will not let them show it openly, but behind closed doors, the impact consumes them entirely. Replaying the moment has become an obsession, searching endlessly for where they miscalculated you so badly. Nothing in their history prepared them for who showed up, and that realization haunts them constantly. Panic lives in a place they cannot reach with logic, and it grows each time your name surfaces. Control was their currency in this dynamic, and realizing it holds no value anymore terrifies them deeply. Admitting they underestimated you would mean admitting fault, and that confession lives nowhere near their lips. Denial is easier than acceptance right now, but even denial is starting to crack under the weight. The first card here is the Page of Cups, and this one surprised me with what it reveals. Page of Cups shows me that underneath the shock, a strange new respect is forming quietly inside them. Your strength stirred something unexpected, an emotional reaction they did not anticipate and still cannot name. Seeing you stand firm triggered admiration they refuse to acknowledge, because admitting it means losing ground. Vulnerability flickered inside them during that encounter, even if it only lasted a few brief seconds. For one brief moment, they saw you clearly, not as who they preferred, but as who you are. That glimpse unsettled them more than the confrontation itself because it made you impossible to dismiss. Emotionally, they are more affected than they will ever let on, and the silence proves that clearly a part of them wanted to meet your honesty with their own, but fear won that battle. Swallowing pride long enough to be real felt too dangerous, so they retreated into familiar old habits. What scares them most is the clarity behind your words, leaving no room for usual deflection. Next, we have the Hierophant, and this card tells me exactly where their resistance is rooted. Rigid beliefs about roles and power are controlling their response, and the Hierophant confirms this entirely. In their mind, a hierarchy existed between you, and your refusal to stay in position shattered that framework. A worldview built on predictability was shattered, and you violated that unspoken contract without any warning. Betrayal is what they feel, not because you hurt them, but because you refuse to be managed. Unspoken rules were still expected to be followed, and you broke every single one of them. Tradition and structure are where they find safety, and you disrupted both in a single interaction. Inability to adapt comes from deep conditioning, not malice, but the effect on you was real regardless. Genuinely, they believed they were entitled to the version of you that always complied without question. Entitlement runs so deep in them that your autonomy registers as an attack rather than a boundary. Questioning their own behavior has not occurred to them yet because self-reflection requires humility they lack. Accountability is foreign territory for them, and the idea that they caused this outcome has not landed. Finally, we have the Nine of Swords, and this card confirms what keeps them awake at night. Nine of Swords shows me sleepless nights and racing thoughts, a mental loop they cannot seem to break. Anxiety about what your shift means for the dynamic torments them, because old rules no longer apply. Scenarios about what comes next keep forming in their mind, and every one ends with lost influence. Nine of Swords says the fear is not about losing you, it is about losing control over you. Power was their comfort, and watching it evaporate in a single moment has left them mentally spiraling. Overthinking has consumed their daily life, and the obsession with understanding your shift grows louder each day. Sleep brings no relief either, because the same conversation replays on loop the moment their eyes close. Inside them, a war zone rages constantly, guilt and pride fighting for dominance without any sign of resolution. Part of them knows they pushed you to this point, but admitting that means rewriting their own story. Shame hides behind their frustration, and the anger they project outward is directed at themselves. Fractured is the only word for their mental state, and it shows no sign of settling down. Confusion at your savage side is only the surface. Beneath it lives a reckoning they cannot face. Everything they thought they knew about you and about their own position has been permanently shattered. So now we move into what is actually happening next, because action is building on both sides fast. Stillness between you two has reached its limit, and what comes next will be visible and unavoidable. What has been building in the background is ready to surface, and neither of you can stop it. This person is about to make a move, and it will not come from peace or clarity. Desperation is driving their next step because the loss of influence has pushed them toward a reaction. Urgency fuels what they do next, and the decisions being made are reactive rather than thoughtful. Expect an attempt to re engage you, but know that the approach will carry an agenda underneath it. Reaching out will be disguised as casual or concerned, but the real motive is testing your position. A message or unexpected appearance is forming in the near term, and the timing will feel calculated. Verification is the goal, checking whether the version of you that showed up is permanent or temporary. Testing your resolve is the primary goal behind their next action, not reconciliation or accountability. Getting you to react emotionally is their way back in, and every move they make aims for that. The first card here is the Knight of Swords, and this confirms that their approach will be swift. Knight of Swords shows me a sudden and aggressive move coming, one that arrives with very little warning. Speed and confrontation define this card, and whatever they do next will carry an edge of urgency. Expect direct communication that feels pointed, designed to catch you before you have time to prepare. Whatever lands in your inbox or crosses your path, know that it was rehearsed more than it appears. Questions framed as concern will arrive, but loaded with real intention sitting underneath every word. Their approach will feel sharp and purposeful, not warm, because warmth is not the motivation here. Information gathering is part of their strategy, probing for weak spots in the new version of you. Resolution is not the purpose behind this move. It is purely about reclaiming lost territory. Confrontation may be wrapped in politeness, but the force behind it will be unmistakable to your gut. Once contact is made, the dynamic shifts immediately, and how you respond determines everything going forward. Preparation on your end is not about planning words, it is about anchoring yourself in calm certainty. Your response does not need to match their intensity. In fact, silence will unsettle them far more. Standing firm without explaining yourself is the most powerful counter because it removes everything they need. Your composure became the weapon they never anticipated, and it remains the strongest card you hold. They expect defense or justification, and offering neither leaves them completely without a strategy to follow. Next, we have the Wheel of Fortune, and this card confirms that the power balance is turning. A major shift in who holds influence is confirmed, and it is landing firmly in your favor. What they controlled for so long is now slipping entirely, and no action on their part reverses it. Cycles are completing here, and the dynamic that existed before cannot be rebuilt in its old form. Timing is working for you now instead of against you, and that reversal changes everything ahead. Every move they make from this point forward will accelerate their loss of position, not restore it. Karma is in motion, and the energy they put into this dynamic is now returning to them directly. Attempting to regain control will backfire visibly, and each effort only confirms your decision was correct. Wheel of Fortune confirms that the turning point has already passed, and there is no reversing it. What once tilted toward them now tilts decisively toward you, and the shift accelerates with every passing day. Fate has reorganized the hierarchy between you, and their former position of power no longer exists. From here forward, every exchange will carry one reminder that the rules have permanently changed. Resistance on their end will eventually burn out because fighting a cycle this strong only drains faster. Your only role in this phase is to remain exactly where you are, unmoved by their efforts. Reacting is the one thing that could slow the shift, and your stillness is what keeps it moving. Confidence in your position is not arrogance. It is the natural result of standing where truth placed you. Action is locked in, and the momentum is entirely on your side, carrying you forward without effort. Nothing they attempt from here can undo what you set in motion because the shift was earned. The ground beneath you is solid and growing stronger, and no outside pressure changes that foundation. Power lives with you now, and every step forward only solidifies the ground you are standing on. Movement is happening whether they accept it or not, and time will only sharpen what you started. Now, this is the part they would never want you to hear because the confessions are raw behind every wall they built. Sits a truth they refuse to touch, and it burns constantly. Openly, they will never admit it, but your strength terrified them into a silence they cannot escape. Seeing you stand unmoved shattered something inside them, and that fracture has not healed at all. Their hidden confession is this: they are afraid of you now in a way they never were before. Fear replaced confidence the moment you stopped bending, and that shift lives rent free in their mind. You became unpredictable to them entirely, and for a person who survives on control, that is devastating. Privately, they replay the interaction obsessively, not to find your weakness, but to understand your power. Admiration is buried so deep inside them that acknowledging it would mean surrendering everything they project. Respecting you openly would collapse the image they built, and that image is all they have left. What they feel for you now is tangled between resentment and awe, and neither feeling will settle. The first card here is the Devil, and this one exposes what they keep chained in the dark. The Devil shows me an obsessive attachment to who you used to be, one they cannot release. Letting go of the old version of you means accepting the new one, and acceptance terrifies them. Possession sits at the root of their fixation, not love or care, but the need to own you. Valuing you as a person never happened, they only valued what your softness gave them access to. Access to your patience was a resource they exploited, and losing it exposed how dependent they were. Attachment to you is not healthy on their end. It is entirely rooted in what you once provided. Without your compliance, their sense of self weakens, and that dependency will never be openly admitted. Control was not about dominance for them. It was about filling an emptiness they cannot face alone. Your presence made them feel powerful, and your absence now makes them feel dangerously incomplete inside. Knowledge of what they did lives in them like poison, and no amount of denial dissolves it. Guilt is the secret they guard most fiercely, because admitting fault means the entire narrative collapses. I feel like they built a version of events where they are the victim, and you disrupted it. Maintaining that false story requires constant energy, and the cracks in it are spreading beyond repair. Privately, they know the full truth, and the gap between what they say and feel is vast. Next, we have the Two of Swords, and this card confirms the confession they are most terrified of. Two of Swords shows me a person frozen between two truths, unable to commit to either one. All in truth says they were wrong and owe you accountability. The other says admitting that destroys them. Choosing honesty would mean losing the identity they built, and that cost feels greater than losing you. Losing you permanently feels less frightening than facing the truth of who they actually are inside. Self-confrontation is the one battle they will never willingly enter, and your strength forced them near. Blindfolded by choice is how they sit, because seeing clearly would break them completely apart. Denial is not ignorance for them. It is an active and deliberate survival strategy running daily. What they hide from the world is a version of themselves they despise, one your clarity exposed. Publicly, the person they present has almost nothing in common with the one hiding beneath the surface. Internal divide will only grow wider from here because truth does not shrink over time. Living divided is exhausting them in ways no one can see. And collapse is quietly approaching. Confession lives in their silence, in the words they swallow and the apologies they rehearse but never send. Every unsent message carries a weight they pretend does not exist, but it bends them a little more. Secretly, they wish they had the courage to be honest, but honesty would cost them their entire persona. Your name triggers a reaction in them, one that no amount of composure can fully contain. Hearing about you from others causes a visible shift, noticed by everyone around them except themselves. Pride is the prison they built with their own hands, and the key is an apology unspoken. What they carry inside is not anger at you, it is shame dressed in every other emotion available. Their most guarded confession is that you outgrew them, and deep down, they always feared that outcome. Watching you become unreachable confirmed every insecurity, ones they spent years pretending did not exist. The cards see everything they hide, and what lives beneath the surface is far heavier than they show. Confessions this buried do not disappear with time, they only grow louder until something finally gives. So let us bring this all together now because the near future confirms exactly what you earned. What is coming next will solidify everything that shifted, and the new dynamic becomes permanent from here. This person will attempt one more approach, and it will be their final effort to test your resolve. When that moment arrives, you will feel the difference because your footing has never been stronger. Their last attempt will lack the power it once carried, and you will recognize that weakness immediately. After that final exchange, the distance between you settles into something they can no longer reverse. Closure will not come from their words, it will come from the silence that follows their failed attempt. Respect is being earned through your refusal to fold, and the people watching are quietly taking notice. Your reputation is shifting in real time, and the version emerging commands a different kind of attention. The first card here is strength, and this confirms that your position in the near future is unshakable. Strength shows me that quiet power continues to define your path, and it deepens from here. No dramatic action is needed from you because your presence alone carries more weight than their loudest move. Stillness in the face of their urgency cements your authority, and the cards confirm it fully. Strength confirms that endurance is your advantage and time works in your favor while it works against them. Grace under pressure is what separates you now. And this card says composure becomes your signature energy. The next card is justice. And this one confirms that balance is being restored in your favor. Justice shows me that accountability is approaching them whether they seek it or not because cycles close. What was imbalanced between you is being corrected, and the correction does not require your involvement. Karma handles what your words already started, and the results will be visible to both of you soon. Justice confirms that truth always surfaces eventually, and their version of events will not hold forever. Fair outcomes are locked in, and nothing about what you did needs defending or explaining to anyone. Energy taken from you is being returned in full, and the rebalancing will be felt by both sides. Now, here is my advice to you, and I want you to carry this forward with intention. Do not soften your stance to make others comfortable, because your clarity is what changed everything here. When they reach out, respond only if it serves your peace, not their need for reassurance. Silence remains your most effective tool, and using it strategically keeps the power exactly where it belongs. Stop explaining your decisions to people who benefited from your silence. They do not deserve that context. Protect this new version of yourself fiercely because pressure to return to who you were is coming. No apology is owed for outgrowing a dynamic, one that was slowly draining everything you had. Trust the instinct that told you enough was enough because that instinct saved you from deeper damage. Moving forward without guilt is not cruelty, it is the natural result of finally choosing yourself. Your boundaries are not punishments. They are the clearest expression of self-worth you have ever shown. Today, the message was clear and direct. This person is confused at how savage you can be. Expecting this side of you is impossible for them, and the cards confirmed confusion runs to the core. Your side showed a person who snapped out of tolerance, stepping into authority, and refusing to look back. Their side revealed a mind in chaos, scrambling to understand a version of you that shattered assumptions. Movement confirmed that the power dynamic has permanently shifted, and every step forward favors your position. Hidden confessions exposed a fear they will never voice, that you outgrew them, and they always knew it. Near future confirms that your strength only deepens, and justice brings balance you never had to force. Every card pointed to one undeniable truth: you are no longer who they thought you were. Standing up and refusing to bend is the version that stays permanently and without apology. Nothing about this transformation is temporary, and the cards made that clear from the very first pull. Permanence defines every card that appeared today, and not one suggested you should step backward. What you built by standing firm cannot be undone, and no one else decides your limits. Own this energy fully, because it was earned through patience and pain and the courage to finally act. You showed up for yourself exactly when it mattered, and that is something no one takes from you. Thank you for being here today, and I hope this reading gave you the confirmation you needed. Take care of yourself and stay sharp, because the best version of you is already standing. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next reading. Confirms exactly what you earned. What is coming next will solidify everything that shifted, and the new dynamic becomes permanent from here. This person will attempt one more approach, and it will be their final effort to test your resolve. When that moment arrives, you will feel the difference, because your footing has never been stronger. Their last attempt will lack the power it once carried, and you will recognize that weakness immediately. After that final exchange, the distance between you settles into something they can no longer reverse. Closure will not come from their words. It will come from the silence that follows their failed attempt. Respect is being earned through your refusal to fold, and the people watching are quietly taking notice. Your reputation is shifting in real time, and the version emerging commands a different kind of attention. The first card here is strength, and this confirms that your position in the near future is unshakable. Strength shows me that quiet power continues to define your path, and it deepens from here. No dramatic action is needed from you, because your presence alone carries more weight than their loudest move. Stillness in the face of their urgency cements your authority, and the cards confirm it fully. Strength confirms that endurance is your advantage, and time works in your favor while it works against them. Grace under pressure is what separates you now, and this card says composure becomes your signature energy. The next card is justice, and this one confirms that balance is being restored in your favor. Justice shows me that accountability is approaching them whether they seek it or not, because cycles close. What was imbalanced between you is being corrected, and the correction does not require your involvement. Karma handles what your words already started, and the results will be visible to both of you soon. Justice confirms that truth always surfaces eventually, and their version of events will not hold forever. Fair outcomes are locked in, and nothing about what you did needs defending or explaining to anyone. Energy taken from you is being returned in full, and the rebalancing will be felt by both sides. Now here is my advice to you, and I want you to carry this forward with intention. Do not soften your stance to make others comfortable, because your clarity is what changed everything here. When they reach out, respond only if it serves your peace, not their need for reassurance. Silence remains your most effective tool, and using it strategically keeps the power exactly where it belongs. Stop explaining your decisions to people who benefited from your silence. They do not deserve that context. Protect this new version of yourself fiercely, because pressure to return to who you were is coming. No apology is owed for outgrowing a dynamic. One that was slowly draining everything you had. Trust the instinct that told you enough was enough, because that instinct saved you from deeper damage. Moving forward without guilt is not cruelty, it is the natural result of finally choosing yourself. Your boundaries are not punishments. They are the clearest expression of self-worth you have ever shown. Today, the message was clear and direct. This person is confused at how savage you can be. Expecting this side of you is impossible for them, and the cards confirmed confusion runs to the core. Your side showed a person who snapped out of tolerance, stepping